It's time for me to go school teacher on you, just to sort of talk about our journey, or my journey, and why I've ended up teaching what I teach. And where it all begins, I think, is the generalizations that people make within this industry. So you can't generalize that this style is better than that style for the most part. It's pretty obvious in some, but basically because in each style you have differences, you have variables, you have some good and bad in a lot of different styles. When we first came out, we were a Krav Maga school. We're no longer a Krav Maga school. The reason being is simply because of that. You know, we didn't like, or we thought it was unfair that we were lumped in with all these other Krav Maga schools that teach absolute nonsense and garbage. So because if this was the Krav Maga syllabus that I was taught, that I was instructed in, when I first came out, I started teaching that. So for the first 18 months, I taught strictly that syllabus. But what I found was it didn't make people as good at defending themselves or as good at fighting as could be. So we started to look at it, and I realized that a lot of the drills were designed, and this is the same for all martial arts, a lot of the drills are designed to make a technique work as opposed to really test a technique. And that's where a lot of people come unstuck. So when we started taking away the restrictions that were placed on the attackers, a few things became evident in the Krav Maga syllabus. So we had to get rid of, your simultaneous block and strike. It just didn't work. We had to get rid of the Krav 360 defense. We had to get rid of a lot of the knife defenses, the limited ground game and things like that. And it basically reduced it to the point where it was that small that it didn't really cover many problems, really. So that's when I had to draw on other sources or other things that I was skilled at. Having a career previously as a combat sports athlete, I started to add boxing, into the mix. I add kickboxing and Thai and wrestling and all those kinds of things, and submission wrestling, to make it a little bit bigger again. But the problem is you can't take one of those styles and just submit it in, because they have to be all. Take boxing, for example. Love boxing, is one of my favorites. Everyone should do it. When I first started kickboxing, I had to stop bobbing and weaving really low because of the danger of getting kicked in the head. Then when I went from kickboxing to Thai, I had to be mindful that in the clinch, people were going to knee. Also, when I transitioned to MMA, when in that clinch, there was a chance I was going to get picked up and thrown and taken to the ground. So what people don't understand is that doesn't mean, the more variables an attacker has, that doesn't mean you add more to the mix. It means you actually take it away. So it made me refine it, all the wrestling and stuff like that. As soon as people were allowed to strike, it cut out a lot of it. So again, this syllabus became, fairly small. Then if you add one thing, pressure testing, to the mix, and when I say pressure testing, I hate using that term because everyone says, yeah, we pressure test, but you don't. I've seen the videos of your pressure testing, and it's lame. It's not pressure testing. Pressure testing means that you're going to go home with a headache. You're going to be hurt for a few days. You know that you're going to have some injuries for it, more than likely. That's pressure testing, the kind of training that you can't do on a daily basis, the kind of training that you can only do so often. And it's not good for you. That's pressure testing, not the stuff that you're claiming it is. When you put it under that fire, it takes out a lot more. It takes out the majority. So this becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you have this little syllabus or this collection of techniques that work under that fire. And this is where most Krav and Combatives and self-defense guys lie, in this little box here. Problem is, they say you can teach it in 6 months. But if you really look at it under a microscope and you analyze it, and I like the iceberg analogy here, in that if the top of the iceberg is just that section here, under that there's a whole range of other things that you can study to make this bit better. So that could include, skill acquisition, refining your skills. It could include strength and conditioning that's going to make you better at it. It could be, biomechanically and analyzing your technique and what's happening at every joint to make sure that you're moving more efficiently and effectively and with more power and speed, things like that. So it involves a whole lot more, and that small toolbox becomes bigger, if you know how to apply it. Also being able to apply it under varying situations, whether it's a loss of footing, recovering from being struck, or any of those things to the mix, designing training to make everything better, then it becomes good. And that's how you can tell the difference between a good combative school and a poor one is basically that, their depth of knowledge, their depth of understanding.